Welcome to the Unscripted Woman Podcast, the show for women who are done living by the rules and ready to reinvent their lives from the inside out. If you're ready to design your next chapter on your own damn terms, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Unscripted Woman Podcast. My name is Kelly Kingsland. I am your host. This is the podcast for women who are done living by the scripts that others have written for them and are out to write their own. Today, I'm being joined by Angie Hawkins. She is an inner glow coach who transforms women from chasing love and approval to radiating confidence so they can finally feel happy, free, and loved for who they are. She works with women who've done therapy, read the books, tried the spiritual path, but still feels like something's missing. Through deep inner work and identity transformation, she helps them break the cycle of not feeling enough so that they can experience real love, confidence, and peace without having to change who they are. She is the author of Running in Slippers, a raw and vulnerable memoir about finding resilience after emotional rock bottom. Angie has moved from Chicago to Hawaii on her own, jumped out of a helicopter and into the ocean Navy SEAL style, bungee jumped, skydived, cliff jumped, yet still is terrified about allowing herself to be seen. Welcome, Angie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
I know, of course. Jumping Navy SEAL into the ocean. Like, oh my God, not many people can say that they've done that. So you will have to let us know how that came about. But to
Yeah.
start, I'd like to, just as everybody knows, I always chat with my guests ahead of time. And when we were talking, you mentioned your childhood
hmm
and the difficulties that you experienced in childhood and how that affected you later on. Can you get into some details on that?
Sure. I think the best way to describe it, because there were a lot of different things going on in my family dynamics, but the best way to summarize it is that both of my parents were very emotionally unavailable. And as an adult, I understand what that means and I understand why they were the way they were. But as a child, you don't have those tools or you don't have that kind of thought process to think through the situation. So, the way I interpreted the situation from a very young age, I developed a belief that I didn't deserve to be loved. So, as I'm sure you're probably aware, your beliefs determine your behaviors, and then your behaviors determine what you attract into your life. So, I struggled for a very long time because I was a people pleaser. I was always chasing love and approval and things outside of myself. I was a perfectionist. I had these impossible standards that I set for myself. And when I didn't achieve them, I had my critical inner voice that was always berating me. And it was just a really exhausting way to live. But because I didn't have that internally, source of self-worth, it was like I was always chasing for outside of myself and it was exhausting. And I never really felt happy or fulfilled, but I never really knew what to do about it. And adding to that, I never really felt like it was something that was available to me. So I didn't have the motivation to do anything about it because I was like, well, this is just how it is and this is all I deserve. And I lived my life like that for a very long time.
Did you find that having that inner compass that was leading you down that path, were you attracting partners that were emotionally unavailable, narcissists, anything like that?
Absolutely. Well, and then in my healing journey, like I learned that we tend to attract people like our parents because it's a subconscious attempt to get the love that we never got from our parents. So, yeah, I absolutely attracted unavailable narcissistic partners. And not only that, in hindsight, when I really started processing because when you start healing, you have to take accountability for how you're contributing to your own problems. Because, yes, these other people were toxic, but I was allowing it. And so in hindsight, with like processing everything, I also realized how I was attracting toxic friendships and like, similar types of people in my friendships or work environments, or just generally everything outside of myself, because I was at that vibration of like being desperate for love and approval and just like taking breadcrumbs and not believing that I was worthy of more. Pretty much everything in my life was at that level.
That's a hard way to live.
Yes, it is. Especially because when you're searching for external proof and these external things are treating you like shit, basically, it's like, well, this is what I deserve, because it's like that's what you see in your external world as well. But what I didn't realize is that my limiting belief of not deserving love is what was bringing all of that into my life and accepting it.
Right, right. So, how old were you when you realized that that was not how you were supposed to be living?
It kind of started in my late 30s, because what happened was like the first real turning point, because there were definitely times where I realized it was exhausting and I realized I was unhappy and unfulfilled. But again, I just didn't really feel worthy of anything more. But when I was 37, my dad passed away. And I had spent 37 years repressing my feelings, stuffing away my feelings, doing everything not to feel them. So I was obviously repressing my healing as well. But when my dad died, the grief was so profound that it was impossible not to feel my feelings. And just a lot of like childhood trauma came up, like things I had even forgot about, because when you're repressing things, you're not thinking about it, but when you like just don't even have the energy to filter any of that, everything comes up. I mean, I would be in the grocery store just shopping, and like all of a sudden I would have like this wave of emotion and like have a memory from something that happened in my childhood. And it really started to get me thinking about why I was living the way I was. And I started feeling like maybe I did have some agency over my life. So the first real change that I made, because I was living in Chicago and I was like, I'm really not happy. I want to be happy. So I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Hawaii. And I think it was well intentioned in the sense that it was like the first real thing that I did because I decided that I wanted to be happier. And I was like, okay, how can I do this? So it was well intentioned in the sense that I was like actually taking agency over my life. I actually felt deserving of something better, even if it was just a little bit better. But it wasn't well intentioned in that I was still searching for things outside of myself. So I think it was around the time I was 37 was when I had that first boost of like, okay, I'm ready to live a different way. But it was misguided for a while because I didn't know how, and I didn't really have anyone to guide me through that process.
Right. Now, the emotional and mental toll that the repression of your emotions took, were there any sort of addiction issues for just trying to numb everything?
Yes. And it's interesting because usually we think of like drugs, alcohol, things like that as numbing behaviors or addictions. My addictions were like overworking and always needing to be busy. I also had an obsession with over exercising. And that came through mostly. I did go to the gym and lift weights, but I also ran marathons. And like both overworking and running marathons, they're like socially acceptable ways to numb yourself, because I would run marathons and I would get praised for it. But the only reason I was running marathons is because when you go on a long run, you get that runner's high. And it's like, for me, it was just even like a 6 mile run, it was easy for me to dissociate from my feelings. And so it was like such a negative cycle. And that's a thing that I don't feel like is talked about a lot. Like in the marathon community or like these extreme sports, it's a lot of like numbing addictive behavior. It's not because like these are like overachievers. And I'm just generalizing, but just from my experience, from me and the people I met, it's a lot of like addictive numbing behavior, but it's socially acceptable, so that's why people are drawn to it. Because if you run a marathon, everyone's cheering for you, but if you're doing drugs, then people are like, you need to get help.
Mhm.
So that didn't help either, because the way I choose to be addicted and numb were actually very socially acceptable. So nobody was telling me I had a problem. I was justifying it because it's like, well, I'm exercising, I'm working, like there's nothing wrong with this. And I would justify it also. I would call myself a high achiever, even though I was just like on this totally different dysfunctional level of achievement.
Wow. So eventually, everything kind of came to a head
Yes.
and you snapped.
Yes.
And there was an attempt to take your own life.
Yes.
What age did that happen at?
I was 40.
Okay. And if you're comfortable discussing it, can you tell us what happened?
Yes. And I'm going to go back to when I moved to Hawaii because, again, I started realizing things, and I that was my first step to start healing, but it was super misguided. And you can't move away from your problems. So I moved to Hawaii, and I still had the same beliefs, I still had the same behaviors. So it was the same life, just a different location. And a lot of people think like my life is perfect because I live in Hawaii, and I will be the first person to tell anybody, if your internal world is a mess, then that is your life. It doesn't matter if you live in paradise or Antarctica or where, like you will experience that in your external world as well. And it doesn't matter if it's a sunny day or not. And not only was I living the same life because I was repeating the same patterns, I developed a new host of problems. So for example, I moved here in 2018, which was before remote work was the trendy thing to do, but I was super fortunate because my job allowed me to, because I was still working in corporate America at the time. So they allowed me to move here and keep my job. And right when I moved, there was this huge management shakeup that threatened my role. So the first year I lived here, I lived in constant fear of losing my job. So that was a pretty big deal. Also, I had a really hard time making friends, which was something that I never experienced in Chicago. So I wasn't even expecting, but it was like super lonely and isolating because I was thousands of miles away from anyone I knew, and I was working remote. So it wasn't like I was like meeting anyone at work or anything. So I was really lonely for a while when I first moved here. And then the other major thing that happened right off the bat is, to prove how all in and committed I was to my decision, I bought a new condo immediately within the first few months of living here.
Oh,
And a month, yeah, so that was like self-imposed stress. But then a month after I closed on my condo, a shared building pipe backflowed into my bathroom sink and I wasn't home. So my entire condo flooded. So these are all things that happened within the first like 3 months of me moving here. And that was 2018. And the next 2 years, it was just like thing after thing. Like my grandma died. I did make some friends, but a few of them ended up being extremely toxic because, again, I was still drawing in people like that because I hadn't changed my beliefs or behaviors. So it was just like 2 years of constant stress. And then COVID happened. So I don't think I had to explain how that exacerbated the situation. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the end of a relationship during COVID, because I think we all have moments, because I feel like in life, when it rains, it pours, right? So we all
hmm.
have these moments where it's like, I just need this to stop because I can't take it anymore. So I was definitely feeling that. But then layered on top of that feeling was this sheer feeling of hopelessness, because I had been living, because again, I was 40 years old. So I spent 40 years living my life in a way that wasn't happy and fulfilling. And I truly did not see any hope for the future, which is such a dangerous place to be. So I intentionally overdosed and I took an entire bottle of my anxiety medication. And I spent a day and a half unconscious in my bathroom. I spent another day and a half in the hospital, and I was released from the hospital, and I called a friend and I told her everything that happened. And I ended with, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And it sent a cold chill through my body. And it was so profound. And it really made me think because I was like, I could have died and I didn't. So I think she's right. And because it just made me think, I think I have a purpose. I don't know what it is, but I'm determined to figure it out. So that moment was so impactful because it actually changed my mindset from this victim mindset of like, these things are happening to me. This is just what I deserve. There isn't anything I can do about it, to I want to start living my life differently and I need to get help and I need to do it the right way and I need to be the person who's making these changes. So that moment was so impactful and powerful. And that was actually what flipped the switch to make the change.
So you were on anti-anxiety medications.
Hmm.
Were they weren't aware of the thought patterns that you were having? Because obviously you were working with professionals if you had a prescription.
Well, the problem is it was kind of loose because I was originally prescribed them in Chicago, and it was around the time my dad died. So I think I just went to my doctor and I was like, I'm having anxiety because my dad died, blah, blah, blah. So she gave me a prescription. It was like 10 pills, and like the refill period was like an entire year. So
Hmm.
she was like very strict with like how many I could have.
Hmm.
And back then I wasn't abusing them. So I think the 10 pills, because they were so strong, I would just take a half pill before I went to bed. And I wasn't taking them every day or all the time. So 10 pills was basically 20 doses for me because I was cutting them in half. And
Hmm.
even those 20 doses, like I could spread that out throughout the year because I was only using them in quote unquote emergencies.
Right.
Um, and then when I got to Hawaii and I went to my doctor, and I basically asked for the exact same thing. I was like, she only gives me, my doctor in Chicago, I was like, she only gave me 10 pills a year. And basically I asked him for the same thing, and he gave me 30. And I think
Oh.
yeah, and I think the refill was like 90 days or something. But in my mind, I was like, oh, this will last like 3 years. And I wasn't abusing them initially. I didn't start abusing them until COVID because that's when things started getting really bad. And there was a period, like in the months leading up to taking the whole bottle, I started taking a half pill every single night. So that's when I really started to become addicted to them. And I don't know. I can't speak for my doctor, probably because it was COVID, because my stay in the hospital, just to like go forward a little bit, because I was in the emergency room for a little bit and then I stayed at the psych ward. And I remember they told me in the psych ward because they were basically asking me, like, what the heck happened? And I was like telling them all of the reasons, which it was more than just COVID, but I ended with, like, with all the restrictions of COVID, like, I just can't take this anymore. And they even said, like, yeah, like the amount of mental health cases and suicide attempts that they had seen since COVID was like exponential.
Hmm.
So I can't speak for my doctor, but he probably just thought had anxiety because of COVID. So I'm not really sure why he became so free with the prescription, because in the months leading up to the attempt, I was getting it refilled, like, I guess it would have been like every other month, because he was giving
Hmm.
me 30 pills and I was cutting them in half. So that would last 60 days.
Hmm.
So even in his mind, I probably wasn't even abusing them at that time because I'm just taking a half pill every night. And it was an uptick, but he might have just assumed, like, it's COVID. There's a lot of restrictions and stuff going on. So she's just anxious. Again, I can't
Hmm.
speak for him, but if I had to like guess his thought process, that probably would have been it, because I didn't truly abuse them until I took the whole bottle.
Right. Um, so because I mean, I've been blessed to have never been in that situation. When these thoughts start happening, did you not reach out for help because you just felt that there was no point, or you didn't have anybody you could reach out to? Like, what was the thought process?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'm not close to most of my family members just because we've always been very disconnected. My relationship with my mom is tricky because my entire life, anytime I've gone to her about how I'm feeling, her response is very dismissive because it's always like, well, other people have it worse. Or I remember I didn't tell her about my suicide attempt until several years later for this reason, because she is very dismissive. And I remember her response was, well, I don't know what you're so depressed about because you have a good job that pays well. So, like, I knew I couldn't go to her because when you're in those deep,
Hmm.
dark thoughts, like, that's the last thing you want to hear. So,
Hmm.
for my own emotional safety, I wasn't telling my mom any of this, and I didn't really have any other family members I could tell. And also, I was able to make some friends right before all of the the closures and stuff of COVID. But in Hawaii, it was super restrictive. So the only people I would see on a weekly basis is every Friday, because all the gyms were closed. I had three girls that I worked out with because one of them had a garage gym set up. So the four of us, we called it the garage gang, we would get together in a garage and work out. And I consider them friends, but none of them really felt safe to talk to because two I didn't know super well. And the one that I did feel close to, it's like she always had her own drama going on. And I never really felt like there was space for me to talk about what was going on with me. And
Hmm.
honestly, at that time, she wasn't a good enough friend that I never really felt like she cared about what was going on with me. Because even if I did tell her things, she just seemed uninterested, which was also something that my mom did. So this is another example of how you tend to attract even friends that are similar to your
Hmm.
parents. And then I was seeing someone, but then that relationship ended. And that was kind of like the catalyst to all of this. So my point is, on a weekly basis, I was really only seeing those three other girls. Like, I had no
Hmm.
interaction with anyone else. I didn't have any other friends because I was having a hard time making friends to begin with. And then COVID happened and that all came to a halt. So, and that's just it, because I write about my experience in my book because it wasn't like just one day I was like, oh, I don't want to be alive. It was just like the compounding effect. And I
Hmm.
feel like even now, because I'm trying to put myself back into like the COVID times, I think we forget like how isolating it was, because I truly was not in contact or talking to anybody. And that just exacerbated the situation. So long story short, I didn't have anyone I felt safe talking to or telling.
Right, right. I'm in Ontario, and our restrictions were ridiculous. They were
Yeah, and see, and
so
it's different for
strict.
other people too, because I think sometimes people don't resonate when I say that. So I think you do. And
Yeah,
just even you saying that, I'm like, okay, I get it, because it's hard, right? When it's
yeah.
like, actually, at one point they were telling us, like, don't even leave your house. Like, they can't regulate that.
Hmm.
But even like the garage gang, we were kind of nervous because it's like, what if one of the neighbors calls and tells on us? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So that's how bad it was. And so I think you can at least relate.
yeah. It sounds very similar. I know bylaw officers would come by if there was a gathering. I think at one point you were only allowed the people in your immediate household,
Yep,
no
that's what
one
they were doing
else.
to us. And that's why we were nervous about the garage gang, because we didn't live together. So they
Yeah,
were like, so people could have called the police on us.
yeah. They would, if you were out driving around and there was more than one person in the car, they could pull you over and check your driver's licenses to make sure you lived in the
For
same
the address.
residence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how
It
it
was
was here,
tough.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Well,
mean,
yeah, because it was bad enough with just everything being closed, but then to add that layer of like being on edge because it's like I'm not even allowed to work out in a garage with my friends.
yeah, we used to do driveway drinks. We'd have our lawn chairs or whatever, and just like a few of us would be spreaded out all over the driveway
Oh,
and have a drink together. But we were, 10 feet away from each other. And
well, at least you were still like, yeah, in general proximity
yeah, exactly,
legally.
exactly. Although it was winter, so it wasn't a good thing.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, it's cold here in March. We shut down in March of 2020. And, but there's still snow on the ground in March.
Yeah,
So,
I know, because I used to live in Chicago. There, it would still snow in April.
yeah. So you're out there with your blankets and your coats and everything else. Anyways, so, well, for one, I'm really glad that you didn't succeed.
Thank you.
I'm curious, you said you were on the floor of your bathroom for a day and a half and then in the hospital for a day and a half. Who found you at the day and a half point? Or did you wake up and call?
Yeah, so I was blacked out. So I didn't remember exactly what happened, but I woke up and I called one of my friends, but I was just talking gibberish. So she was like, she knew something was wrong and she's like, I'm coming to get you. And so she came and got me and took me to the hospital.
Oh, that's good.
And yeah, and just that act reminded me because it's like my brain wanted one thing and I think my soul wanted another thing because I find it so interesting because again I was blacked out. I kind of remembered talking to her on the phone, but that was it because I was even like how did I even walk or get in the car and she was like, you weren't doing it very well." But just because I was so out of it and still managed to call her, to me that feels like my soul wanted something different than my what my brain wanted
Hmm.
because for me to not even remember and even once my brain did become aware of what was happening, I was still in the mindset of I don't want to be here. So I think my soul wanted something differently and that's why I called for help. It's also notable because I tend to be one of those people who doesn't ask for help. I'm even a lot better now, but I still struggle with asking for help. So for me, I think it's really impactful that I asked for help. So that means that my soul really wanted it.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe your subconscious knew something you didn't, something your conscious
Yeah,
didn't
that
know,
too.
right?
Also, yeah, I feel like my dad protects me a lot, so I also think he played a role in it as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So the glow method, when this was all done, you decided that you were going to focus on helping others, which is fantastic. So tell
Yes.
me what the glow method is. How did you come up with it?
So the glow method, well, my whole philosophy for my coaching program of inner glow coaching, it's based on the concept of we're all born with this light inside of us. You know, you see kids, they're like running around and screaming and they don't care. But, you know, we go along life and there's like society systems and school systems and family systems that tell us what we should or should not be doing. And it slowly starts dimming our life because we're living our life to conform to all these things outside of ourselves. And so because after I got out of the hospital, I invested in myself, I hired a coach, and I started doing the inner work the right way. And when I really started to have that belief that I did deserve to be loved, I was so full of my own self love that it just felt like this like warm energy in my chest. And it just felt so good. And not only that, it would radiate outward because other people would tell me, like, oh, you're glowing, or they would make comments like that. So I, yeah, I quit corporate America. I decided to be an inner glow coach. And the glow method, it's an acronym. So it stands for G stands for go back to your childhood because like me, everyone generally has, if you peel back all the layers of the onions, because we have all these different limiting beliefs, but they usually come back to one core limiting belief that was formed in our developmental years. So, to really make lasting change, you have to figure out what that belief is and then start creating belief reprogramming and behavior changes based on that to really create lasting change. Like there's other like band-aid solutions you can do, but it's just that's just it. They're band-aid solutions. So G stands for go back to your childhood and go through that whole process. L stands for light yourself up, because even though doing the inner work can take time, because my program is a 6-month program, but there's so many immediate quick wins that you can get because, again, we're not fixing ourselves or changing anything about who we are. We're just rekindling that light inside of us. So there's so many easy things you can do right off the bat. Like my huge philosophy is do at least one thing a day that brings you joy. And there's obviously other ways to light yourself up. So that is L. O stands for overcome external validation, because again, our light dims when we're living our life for things outside of ourselves. But when you're focused on who you are and your light, and if you're proud of yourself, and if you're living in integrity, and if you're living by your own rules of life, then you like really don't give a shit about external validation. And that's like the main thing that we work on in the program. And then W stands for welcome yourself back home, because I feel like a lot of self-help, the messaging is like, well, you need to fix something about yourself or change who you are. But it's just, again, it's just about rekindling that inner light and coming back to who you were before everyone else told you who you should be.
Nice. So, how do you work with your clients using the glow method?
So it's a 6 month and it's one-on-one, and we meet every single week. And it's not like linearly going through each step because it's based on the person. But after the initial step of going back to your childhood and figuring out what that limiting belief is, we can come up with a program to, and again, it's a lot of the belief reprogramming through behavior changes. So it's basically just creating the new habits to act in coherence with the new belief, because beliefs are just, they're not facts. So my belief that I didn't deserve to be loved, that was not a fact. So all I have to do is create the new belief that I want to have and make sure my behaviors are in coherence with that belief. And that's what ultimately reprograms your beliefs. So it's dependent on the person, but it's all about creating the new behaviors that you want to have that are in coherence with the new belief.
Interesting. And without giving trade secrets away, um, what methodologies do you focus on when you're working with them? Is it a lot of, I don't want to say talk therapy because you're not a therapist, but
Mm-mm.
do you bring in other modalities?
Yeah, so I use some NLP techniques. I also use somatic techniques because I think a lot of our trauma is stored in our body. So even honestly, even like going for a mindful walk or something like that can be like so restorative. But yeah, grounding. I it depends on the person, because some people like journaling, some people don't. So it could be journaling. Some people like guided meditation, some people don't. So it's really tailored to the person.
Okay, okay. Love meditation.
Yeah, and some people don't though. But also,
Yeah.
but for the people who don't like guided meditations, I'm like, are you open to like a mindful walk? Because that can be meditative as well. And I
Hmm.
feel like even if someone doesn't like the sitting down meditation, they're usually open to a meditative walk, and like that works just as well.
Yeah, yeah. And, I find, and I'm sure you're the same, when you talk about grounding, I mean, if you can get outside and just get your feet on the earth.
That's what I tell people. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, even if like if it's 10 minutes and you're just standing in the grass for 10 minutes, like it doesn't need to be like this all day affair or this whole production. Yeah, just put your feet in the grass.
yeah,
Or even just
exactly.
getting sunlight for 10 minutes. Like anything in nature is really grounding.
Yeah, yeah. I know where I live, I'm right by a lake. Um, and on the other side of me is like a provincial park. So, which is all, forest.
Yeah.
So depending which way I go, I either have my feet in the sand and water, or I have
Yeah.
my feet in the
In the
grass and
forest.
dirt. So, but you're right. It's fantastic. It's such a good way to decompress and physically healthy for you. The ions that you are absorbing out of the earth are great for your system.
Yeah, because a huge part of what I do is nervous system regulation, and that's like the whole point of the walk, meditation, walks, grounding. It's soothing to your nervous system because we get in these habits where we're always hyper vigilant and dysregulated, but like let's get into habits where we're regulated. And again, it really doesn't take that much time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now I have to go back to, because you knew I was going to ask about this. Jumping out of a helicopter into the ocean, Navy SEAL style. How did that happen?
Well, it actually started with bungee jumping. So people think I'm adventurous. I actually don't consider myself adventurous. I used to be not courageous, not brave. I lived my life in fear. And like moving from Chicago to Hawaii, that was probably at that time the bravest thing I had ever done. And after I moved here, it was somewhere in 2019, I heard this concept of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Because in my mind, I always thought like people who do all these courageous things, I thought they were fearless. So in my mind, it's like, well, I could never do that because I'm not fearless. But then I heard this concept of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I learned that people who are out there doing courageous things, most of them are scared, they're just not letting that get in their way. So I planned a trip to New Zealand and Australia by myself. That was my way. I was like, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and feel the fear and do it anyway. But in researching New Zealand, allegedly bungee jumping is invented there. So if you like research things to do in New Zealand, bungee jumping is the thing to do. So I was like, well, if I'm going to New Zealand, I might as well go bungee jumping. And it was so terrifying. It was like the scariest thing I ever did. But the sense of pride I had afterwards, because it was like, oh my God, I did it. I was so proud of myself. And so then I've also been skydiving. I've also jumped out of a helicopter into the ocean. I do those things to condition myself to feel the fear and do it anyway. So that way when something comes up in life, so for example, quitting my corporate job and starting my own business was so scary, but I was like, well, I've been bungee jumping and done all these other things, so why can't I do this?
Very true. So, where were you when you did the helicopter jump into the ocean?
It was in Hawaii.
Oh, it
There's this
was.
guy, he was a Navy SEAL, and then after he left the military, he he was like a stunt actor on like some movies and shows, and I think he became a regular on Hawaii Five-O. And then him and one of his ex Navy SEAL friends started this tour company where it's basically like civilians like me can sign up and jump out of the helicopter into the ocean like the Navy SEALs do.
Was there a boat there waiting for you?
Yeah. And also, yeah, it sounds reckless, right? But this guy is an ex Navy SEAL. Like, you get there, he has like a PowerPoint presentation of like the tactics of the day. Like, you can just tell this guy is like from the military. He has like the tactics of the day. He goes over the safety precautions. He was super big on safety. Like, he wouldn't even let me wear earrings. He was like super big on safety. He was like, if I see even one thing that's not safe, we're not doing it. But yes, there was a boat. So how it worked was there were people in the water, and after I jumped, I guess as I was jumping, they were swimming to me. It was like amazing because you didn't even have to do anything after you jumped. Like, you popped up and they had like a flotation device or whatever. So all you had to do was like hold on to them and they would just like tow you to the boat. So it was super safe. So yeah, if I would have like got knocked out or whatever, like there would have been someone in the water to help me.
Right. Oh my, I never even thought of getting knocked out.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like there were a lot of things I didn't think about, but he was like, because I was the first person to jump and he was like, hold on, I have to check for turtles. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Because what if I would have jumped on a turtle? I probably could break a leg or something. So yeah, there's like
Yeah,
all
I
these
never
things
would
like
have
you have
thought
to
of
be
that.
thinking about.
Oh my gosh. I know when we were talking ahead of time for the first time, I had mentioned that I was heading to Costa Rica,
Yeah.
which I went to the end of November. And I believe we discussed you going ziplining there in the jungle, that you hadn't done it yet and you wanted to do it.
No, I've been
Oh, you
ziplining.
have? Okay.
I think I just wanted to go to the jungle. Well, the main reason I would go to Costa Rica is to surf, but I would also love to go to the jungle. Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually went ziplining in New Zealand as well.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Anything you've done adventurous that you do not recommend?
Mm-mm.
No.
I recommend it all. I even recommend bungee jumping. Like it's terrifying, but it's
Mm,
also very rewarding.
I can't even imagine.
But was that your first time ziplining in Costa Rica?
I went 2 years ago, same
Okay.
to in the same area, but yeah, that was my first time.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Yeah, it's not as like crazy as it seems because
No,
you feel like you're going to be like out of control, but it's actually very controlled.
yeah, it is. And very safe. When
Yeah.
you see all the like backup measures taken, you're hooked onto here, which is hooked onto here, and you're hooked onto here, and you're hooked onto here. And it's like 10 things could go and you're still attached.
Which is also good for a foreign country because I went to Bali and I did this thing. It's called a sky bike. So basically, what it is, it's a bicycle on a wire. And other countries are not as litigious as America, and sometimes I forget that. And so I'm on this sky bike and it's like all like raggedy and like making
Oh,
noises. Like it didn't even sound safe. But and I was like attached, I was still attached to these wires and stuff, but it's like I don't know. It's just like when I'm not in America, I'm always like way more cautious because I'm like, is this even safe? Because they don't care if you fall and get hurt.
no, exactly. Exactly. That was one thing that I noticed. Like,
But that's cool that they were actually had all those safety precautions being in a
oh,
foreign
yeah.
country.
Yeah, they were very, very strict with it. Um, but even the resort, we would see workers doing stuff. And I remember looking at my friend, I'm like, they would never get away with that at home.
Yeah, like they wear like flip-flops and like they're not even wearing hard hats and it's like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like I'm watching, there's like this plank between two ladders and the guy's walking on it. Just,
No, I agree.
yeah. Anyways, funny. So, where can everybody find you? I'm going to put obviously your links in the show notes for those people who don't want to read. Where can they reach out to you?
The best way is runninginslippers.com, which is my website. It has the links to social media. The platforms I'm most active are Instagram and YouTube. And then Running in Slippers is also the name of my book, which is a memoir that covers a train wreck 5 year period of my life. And it starts with my dad passing away. And it's extremely vulnerable. And the reason I wrote it that way is because I feel like, on social media, everything is filtered and edited. And even in
Mhm.
real life, we all tend to wear masks. So the entire goal of the book is connection through vulnerability. And it's available on paperback, Kindle, and audiobook, and I am the narrator on the audiobook. I know audiobook listeners like that. And then there's also obviously information on my coaching program. My current coaching program is called Shine from the Inside. So that's where I take you through the glow method and basically rekindle your light so you can stop chasing love and approval outside of yourself and learn to radiate it from within. And I'm also doing a beta program right now with a few people on abundance mindset and money manifestation because again it all comes back to the belief reprogramming and feeling worthy. And also I see so many results because a lot of women come to me to work on relationships, but when you do the inner work it changes all areas of your life.
Mhm.
So I agreed to do this money program, because if you change your mindset about money and feel worthy about money, it changes more than one area of your life. So I'm currently doing a beta program of that, and hopefully we'll have that released fully to everybody in 2026.
Oh, exciting. Nice. All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me, and to the watchers or listeners, depending what platform you're on. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the like, hit the notification button, hit the subscribe button. And if you are an individual who is suffering with thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please reach out to a professional or your nearest distress center in order to get some help when you need it. Thank you, Angie, so much for joining me. This has been absolutely amazing, and I'm sure people have learned a lot. And thank you so much for your vulnerability with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And to the viewers, we will see you next time. Bye.